on my end,
lovely.
Yeah,
being recorded. So.
Perfect, thank you. And on my end, it just doesn't give an option even to type in a question. That's why I was wondering. I don't know if it's because I'm a panelist. I'll let you, I just wanted to mention it, Larry, and I will continue on so as not to hold everyone up. Sure. And we'll be very pleased to introduce Mr. Tim Brown, founder and president of Brown, Thayer and Shed Insurance, located also here in New Canaan. And Tim has, decades of experience in the insurance industry and is here tonight to give us some great tips on driving with our new drivers, insurance, and how that all ties together as our kids learn to drive. Tim, thank you.
Great, thank you guys. So just point of background a little bit. So I grew up here. We were the first class in '72 to go through the high school that exists today. And I've been doing this for about 40 years in town. In fact, Marie's Chet Lewis gave me my first ticket, I think back in '69. So we have some
Sorry.
So exactly, but I loved him dearly. So, and I apologize to those who have seen this and heard it before because it gets redundant, but this is sort of what I do. And what I do is I go through, I'm going to give you a parents discussion, things I'll talk to parents about, and then I also have a kids discussion, which we go through as well. Nobody likes what we have to sell. That's just the fact of it. You're buying something, you're putting it in the drawer, and you're going to call when you're upset. But we just, it's a necessary evil. So we just try to educate for you all to make prudent decisions. What I like to do is I tell parents I want to meet the new drivers. So they get their license. I ask them to come in here with the license, with their transcript, with their good student if they have it, and they listen to my talk. And I'll get into that talk in a little bit in terms of what we do. And much of what I say probably mirrors what you all do. But I want those kids to have skin in the game, right? So it's more than just getting a car and a tank of gas and off they go. So I try to make them understand in lay terms. It's very simple when they walk out here. In fact, one kid didn't get her license for 3 weeks after she listened to my talk, the mother said. So that actually worked. So it's basically adding a child things to think about. It's type of car. What are the financial implications? We never had a recession in the high school parking lot. You go through there, the kind of cars you see there, it's costing you all money, depending who you're insured with. And it's crazy, but that's the reality of it. So if you have a child that's a principal operator, that's going to be more expensive. Like if you have 3 drivers, 3 cars, it's going to be very expensive. So think about the type of car that they're going to be driving. Your agent should be able to jockey these kids around to the most beneficial rate for you. They're covered to drive any car on your policy. It's all about premium when you assign a kid to a car. So they could be assigned to the 85 Lexus, but now he's driving the 2022 BMW. He has an accident. He's covered for that. So it's really all about premium. Grades tend to give you a better credit than driver training. Sorry about that, Marie, but that's just.
No, I know they do. Right?
It's harder to get B+ grades than sometimes driver training. So that's an incentive for those guys. In terms of the cars you have, eliminating particular coverages will be beneficial. You have a car that's 18 years old and it still has collision on there, and you have a child assigned to that vehicle, where you pay the most premium, I don't care if it's an adult or a kid, is on the liability line and it's on the collision line. Those are the things that are going to happen. You're going to hurt somebody else or you're going to damage your car. So when you do have an older car, you may want to consider taking that collision coverage off. It could save you a lot of money, but that's something you can jockey around with your agent that way. Keep in mind that when your child goes away to school, be it prep school or college, if he's over 100 miles without a car, make sure your agent knows that because you're going to get a credit. The girls' credits are much better than the boys. The girls are more mature than us, let's face it. They screw up a lot less than we do. So, but make sure you take advantage of that because they're ready as an adult driver when they go away to school. Preparing kids to drive. So there's no cost during that process from an insurance standpoint. As Maria was saying, you're now driving with your folks, and you get an accident, there's coverage. I had a child over at Wilton, and she took a left right at the tennis courts at the Wilton High School, and she caused a 3-car accident, and 2 cars were totaled. And but the insurance paid out on that, so there's full coverage. And again, she probably didn't get behind the wheel for quite a while, as far as that goes. Seasons, as the officer will speak later on. seasons come with different road conditions. And wet leaves, we're going into wet leaf season. That's a bad one. I think rain, to me personally, I think rain can be one of the more difficult road conditions because it's too unpredictable. And then snow. And what I do with my daughter is I took her up to the high school parking lot when it snowed, the first snow. She hadn't got her license yet, but I made her get into a spin so she understood and felt what it felt like before she went on the road and started crying before she hit a tree. So basically, that's what I had her do. And I would suggest the same for anybody else. When there's nobody around up there, just do it and let them get the feel of what it's like before you're on the road. A big thing is don't loan the car to, or don't let your student or son or daughter loan the car to anybody else. We've had so many claims with that, be it college, be it New Canaan. We've had cars in college that down at Vanderbilt, the car never came back. All right, it got stolen. Kid was in a fraternity house. He was tired. The guy said, I need to go to the liquor store, whatever it may be. He said, take my keys. Car never came back. Left it there, it got stolen. We had a daughter who loaned the parents' car to her boyfriend. She was in the car. He was driving. Laurel Road, hit a tree, totaled the car. Now there's coverage for that, but I just tell people, be careful what you're doing with your keys, because there's a lot of bad things you have. And lawsuits do come back on that. So I tell people, review your liability limits with whoever you're dealing with. Review your liability limits because things are going to happen. And I'll give you one more example of that. We had a youthful operator in New Canaan. This goes back now 15 years or so. And she approached a stoplight and she was obviously looking down or something else because she wasn't going fast. And she hit the driver that was stopped at the light. And he ended up being a paraplegic. And she wasn't going fast. That ended up being a $5.5 million settlement claim. So you don't have to be a millionaire to be sued like one. That's just what happens. Okay. So that's sort of what I talk to the parents about when we can engage on those things, because a lot of times they'll ask me, what kind of car, what should we think about, things like that. So those are the things I'll talk to the parents about. As far as the kids go, when they come in here, I have the kids discussion, and what I'll do is I'll be very simple with them. I'll explain them what insurance is, and basically I center on the liability and the physical damage side. So I say, okay, you're going to leave my office today. You drive down the street, you hit me, and I got 3 people in the car, or you hit 3 cars. That's what your parents have paid me to protect them to do, is the liability, and that's going to defend them, and it's going to fix the other person's car, etc. And the physical damage portion is basically when you hit something, could be a tree, could be another car, that's going to fix your own car. So there's 2 big components to this, and I instill upon them that that's what it really does. So they have an understanding of what it is. And I also tell them, if it's a boy sitting in front of me, I said, you know what, and I'm making these numbers up certainly, but the boys, as I said before, they tend to screw up. So you may have a $4,000 premium on your policy. Along comes Jimmy, now he's on the policy. And now it's going to go to $5,000, depending what he's going to be driving. Now Jimmy has an accident, he has a ticket. Now that 5 is going to go to 7. So I let them know the implications of things that can happen and that do happen when they're driving a car. So again, it's not the keys and the tank of gas. Causes of accident claims that we see, and a lot of them were the kids. It's the awareness. It's the parkway entrance. So we get on Merritt Parkway off South Avenue. You're waiting your turn. The guy in front of you starts to go. You're now looking back to see if it's your turn, and now that guy stops in front of you. He didn't actually go all the way. You hit the rear of him. So we talk about kids to think about those things. Stop signs, public lots, high school. We have so many backups. Walter Stewart, so many backups where everybody's backing up together and they hit in the middle. So there's so many of those things that happen. This is a big one. Distractions with your illegal passengers. We know that the kids sometimes are going to sneak in the cars, and that's going to be it. I had a daughter and a mother sitting in front of me. We did our little talk, and the mother wanted to sit down on it. And all the daughter could talk about was borrowing $10 to get her nails done. So I'm not sure how much she digested in this thing, but literally an hour later, I got a phone call from the mother. She had 2 kids. She was on the soccer team, 2 kids on the soccer team with her. She went into a ravine on Brushy Ridge Road and totaled the car. And a couple of the kids got hurt. So those things happen. Cell phones, obviously, it's self-evident what's happening with those things. And distractions. Speeding, that's a given. And then we have the infamous, everybody claims they avoided the deer and they hit a tree at night, so the deer always is in every excuse, basically. So if you get an accident, again, this is what I'm telling the kids. It's embarrassing. Your friends are driving by. They're making fun of you. But call George. Call the police and get them there, especially when it's not your fault. But call them anyway. And but get a witness. I'll give you an example that happened to me probably about 25, 30 years ago. I was up at Easton cutting down a Christmas tree. It was snowing. And I was the next in line to go on and take a left on a hilly road. And all of a sudden, a tractor trailer truck was coming down, and he was skidding. And he was coming right into me. I couldn't do anything about it. He plowed into me. First thing I did was I got out of the car and I said to the guy behind me, "Did you see that?" He said, "Yes." So I got all his information. So I got a witness in case this guy becomes a he said, she said situation. So I tell kids, always find a witness. And I say, get the name of the other person, get the name, the phone number. And I said, use your cell phone to your advantage because we know it's on, we know it's in the car. Take pictures, do what you have to do. I make my drivers, student drivers, when I speak to them, I make them put my cell phone in their phone. They're probably most likely going to call me before they call the parents because they're scared to death, or they're crying, or something else is going on. So we give them my office phone, and I give them mine. And I say about the whole witness thing, don't let some old guy talk you out of calling the police or waiting for the police because I got to go to the train. That happens a lot, and unfortunately, we come in second place on that. It becomes a he said, she said situation, and then your rates are going to go up because you have nobody to go after. We talked about giving the keys to other people. When people tend to get the newspaper, I always used to tell them to read the police blotters because you can see the more active times of things happening. And we know when it gets dark, things happen, right? So the tail lights, the blinkers, things like that, I say just take note of that. Drinking and driving. We know that kids get into tough situations. Drinking and driving is a death sentence. It's not negotiable, and your policy will get canceled. So there's no negotiation on that. Underage parties, we know there's a lot of those things, and when the officer can speak more to that, but I know when they say, okay, everybody of age over here, everybody that's not over here, and they will ticket you, and that shows up now on your motor vehicle report. We've had a lot of those come up. So I tell my kids, and I told my boys this when they were driving in town, I said, when you go to a party and you know it could be a compromising situation, always have a reason to get out of it before you get into it, okay? So the peer pressure is the worst thing we all experience as kids. And I tell them, if somebody wants you to drive and has been drinking, to say, listen, I got bad insurance. My insurance guy's a pain in the ass. He's just terrible, whatever it may be. And I've had too many incidents. I can't afford to do this. So blame somebody else so you're out of that peer pressure situation, okay? So then almost lastly, what I do is I have these kids look at 3 articles, and these are real experiences, and they're all in New Canaan. And I don't know if you can see any of this stuff. Probably not, but this is I don't know, can you see this or not? No, that? Yes? Okay. So what that is, this is a friend of mine who is actually the manager of Gates Restaurant for 30 years. He was going to play golf down at Woodway at 7:30 one morning. He's on Lower Wheat Street, and the roads were damp. And Lower Wheat Street, the macadam down there was a little different. And he went around the corner, and he never sped at all. And he was driving a Ford Explorer, and the Ford Explorer flipped, and it rolled into a tree. And the tree was only like that. It was very little, but trees don't give. Telephone poles will give, trees just don't give. And he ended up being paralyzed from the chest down. And he died 3 or 4 days later in Norwalk Hospital. And then I've got this other one, which is not a picture, but basically it's an article that was at the Advertiser back in 81, December of 81. It's my brother-in-law, and he was coming from St. Mark's Church to go downtown to see his girlfriend and my wife. And it was so foggy you couldn't see 4 feet in front of him. It was that bad. And when he left St. Mark's to go down towards God's Acre, he made that sharp left turn. He never knew there was a turn there. And he hit a tree, and he didn't make it. He died instantly. And I'll tell you why I have these kids read this in a second. This last one, and maybe you can see that, it says 2 survived this crash. Maybe you can see that. Okay. I was in that car. And now we were going to a high school basketball game in January of 72. And my buddy was driving, and we were passing friends of ours just past the country club down towards the field club where you start having that little bend there. And he passed buddies of ours, and he saw a car coming up around the bend. And rather than dropping back, he sped ahead, pulled in front of our friends, but we spun for about 75 to 80 yards. And we flipped. The car flipped and hit a telephone pole just up the hill from the field club. It was a main line. Power went off into Vista. His parents were playing paddle tennis at the lake club. The power goes off. Not a scratch on us. You know, we live to tell the story. And what I tell these kids, the reason I do that is all three of these situations are very different. My friend was killed because of road condition. My brother-in-law was killed because he couldn't see, right? The elements. And we were speeding. And out of the three, we were the people that shouldn't be here today. The other two should probably be here. But it was sort of an abusive privilege. I was not driving, but it was an abusive privilege. So I instill on these kids, it doesn't have to be speeding for somebody to be severely injured. And so I think it sort of brings home because, you know, we see movies and you read articles, but when you actually read something and it's happened in your town and you see the paper and the Canaan advertising, it sort of brings it home a little bit more. So anyway, so that's sort of how I wrap it up with these kids. And I basically say, you know, driving is a privilege, it's not a right. And so I said, don't abuse it because it's basically a weapon that you have in your hand. And so anyway, that's sort of my spiel between parents and the kids. Done. Cut.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate your insight. Obviously, you've been doing this and you've obviously seen quite a few very sad incidents. So thank you for sharing that knowledge with us.
Yep.
Really appreciate it. And now I'm going to move to Officer George. Am I saying that right? Caponera?
Yep, you got it.
Good. Just want to make sure. Officer Caponera was formerly a probation officer for the state of Delaware. He has a degree in criminal justice, and he joined the New Canaan Police Department back in February of 2010. So he's going to now discuss some important laws in Connecticut relating to our new drivers. I'll turn it over to you now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So what I want to do is just kind of go over some of the myths, truths and myths out there when it comes to Connecticut laws regarding driving, what the police's authority is, what we can and can't do, what rights young drivers especially have, and how they are treated in terms of the criminal justice system compared to legal adults who are 18. So I'm going to go to a top 10 in a little bit, but just some basic trivia here. Most importantly, in the state of Connecticut, driving is a privilege, not a right. That's very important. A right is something that's, for example, in the Bill of Rights, such as the right to free speech. That's a right. We all have that right in this country. None of us have the right to drive a car because there were no cars, obviously, in those times and the founding fathers, so they didn't put that in there. So it's a privilege. And because it's a privilege, it's heavily regulated. And there's over 400 traffic laws in the state of Connecticut alone. So trust me when I tell you that if we're looking for a reason to pull the car over, we can easily find one. We have a lot of authority when it comes to motor vehicle laws, and that's for one simple reason. The interest of the community, according to the courts and the law, takes precedence over the interest of the individual. So we want to look after the group, most importantly. So even if that means taking someone who might be impaired or might be a risk off the road, which might be an infringement on their so-called rights, we're going to do that to protect the group as a whole. That's very common with a lot of senior drivers, for example, where we have to seize their licenses. But we will also seize a license of a youthful driver if the person's acting in a reckless manner. So we have the right to seize licenses right there on the spot for any vehicle we suspect is just not being serious about the rules. I've just encountered people who are in a really bad mood, raging out, driving erratically. I stop the car. They're even more irrational with me. I'm almost thinking this person's experiencing some sort of mental health distress. I'll seize their license on them. So their car gets towed. They lose their license. They have to go back to the DMV to be retested now from beginning, eyes, road test, the whole nine. to earn that privilege back to drive a car in the state of Connecticut. Even if you are an out-of-state driver on our roads, we have implied consent, which I'm going to touch on a couple more times here. But by setting foot in the state of Connecticut or holding a license in the state of Connecticut, you've automatically consented by law to all of our rules on the road. So you don't have the right to say, I don't recognize that, I refuse to do that. You don't have that right. That plays in big for field testing for DUI, which I will again touch on. So again, it's implied consent. The courts have ruled on this, that this is legal. This is the law of the land. You don't have the right to say, for example, I'm not giving you my license until I have a lawyer here, which is a common push I'm starting to get more and more of. I go, no problem, then you're under arrest. You can come with me. You don't have the right, if I tell you to get out of the car, to say, no, I'm not getting out of the car. Now, do we just exercise this randomly? No, we use probable cause, reasonable suspicion. We are looking at something else that you might not think we see, but we've spotted, such as maybe a concealed weapon or, an open container or anything like that. But if we give you an order by law, you have to follow it. You do have a right to challenge us in one place, and that's in court. Now, that is where you have free reign to ask us any questions or challenge any of our findings or any of our methods, but you don't have the right to do it at the scene. And simply refusing is what's called interfering with an officer. And for example, a person who says, well, you know what? I wasn't speeding. I don't believe you. I think you just targeted me for some reason. I'm not giving my license. Well, I'm not going to cite you now even for the license violation, for the speeding violation. I'm just going to cite you for failure to give me your license, which is interfering with an officer, obstructing my investigation, and you'll be arrested and you'll be brought to the police department and put on a bond. So we have a lot of rules. Now, we exercise them very, with a lot of discretion and a lot of restraint, but just have to keep in mind out there, it's not the same as being in your house where you have a Fourth Amendment right to privacy, which can only be waived with a search warrant or an arrest warrant. So if the driver of the vehicle has friends in the car and those friends have something in the back seat that the driver truly doesn't know about, for example, drugs, for example, handgun, the driver can be just as responsible as the friend. So friend number 2 in the back seat has a gun or drugs. Friend 1 in the front seat does not. We will stop the car, we find the stuff, we will charge the friend in the back seat, we will not charge the friend in the front seat, and we will charge the driver. So if you're the driver, you are really responsible for who's in your car. So keep that in mind whenever you put someone in your car who you don't want, who you just feels like that wild card, because you can tell us all you want that you didn't have anything to do with it, but you're the driver, so you hold responsibility. DUI for alcohol is the same as DUI for all drugs now, marijuana included. Alcohol is legal, but you can still be arrested for consuming it while driving. You can still be arrested for consuming marijuana while driving. We have tests now, roadside tests that are recognized through what's called ARIDE, Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving Enforcement, that can test for that at the scene. If you fail, you will be arrested for DUI of drugs, narcotics. And it doesn't matter if you have no alcohol in your system, we will still process you. In fact, for the last 3 or 4 years, I have averaged more DUIs for drugs than alcohol. That's become the trend. Now, we still get alcohol. We just had a guy, if anyone's here seen all the construction going on Main Street all the time lately, well, at 2:30 in the morning last week, I was there posted up and I had a guy drive right through the work zone past 20 trucks, 45 years old, and he was very heavily intoxicated on alcohol. And well, that was an easy one because he went right through a work zone. So I stopped him and he was placed under arrest. So, but drugs seem to be trending more as a bigger problem with us than alcohol. Uber drivers will take an intoxicated person home on alcohol, but they don't seem to want to take intoxicated people on like marijuana home. So you can't smoke weed and drive. Just remember that. This one is kind of dated now. This mattered more 5-6 years ago. We have body cams. I'm sure everybody's fully aware of that. They're always on. Whatever you say will be played back at court. So any threats or comments or misbehavior is shown to court. So we just let the camera roll and then we play it back in court when you are sitting there with a nice clean suit jacket on and tie saying that, this is complete misunderstanding or the officer was acting, in an unfair manner. We just push play, and it kind of speaks for itself. So I always say, like, even if you're mad or irritated about the whole situation, it's best to just, cooperate, and then you can of course challenge it in court. And again, our cameras are two ways. They're reviewed by our supervisors all the time to make sure that we are complying with policy and procedure as well, and of course the law. Some myths that I get a lot of to this day, still with car accidents. There is no such thing as stop short in Connecticut. The vehicle in front of you slams on his brakes and you crash into him, and I mean fully slams on his brakes. Who do you think is at fault? If you thought it was him, you're wrong. It was you. You have to stay a safe and reasonable distance behind him at all times so that even if he does stop short, you can stop in time. Now, this protects you as well when you're driving the car and someone's too close and someone hits you from behind and you're 16 and that person's 40 and they're coming out of a business meeting and they say, this kid was just acting crazy. I'm like, well, whatever your judgment on this kid is irrelevant. This kid was in front. This kid had a right of way. So you're going to be, I always tell the, the adult, you're going to be cited now for striking the 16-year-old. So that's how the law works. There is no such thing as stop short. Always stay a safe distance back. So what is safe distance? Just to keep it simple, if you can't see the tires touching the road of the vehicle in front of you, you're way too close and back up. Kids and seatbelts. The seatbelt law was just amended this year, literally a month ago. Everyone in the car has to have seatbelts now. Your father's in the back seat and he doesn't want to put a seatbelt on, we'll give your father a ticket and we'll give you a ticket because you're the driver. Everyone has to have seatbelts. Now, with kids, there's special exceptions. There's special rules added as well. Simple rules 7 and 70. 7 years old or 70 pounds, they must be in a car seat, whichever comes first. So if the kid's six years old, but 90 pounds, he's just a big kid, he's good. But 7 years old or 70 pounds, they got to be in a car seat. If you're driving because your mom says or your dad says, hey, take your brother to soccer practice, and you're taking your 7-year-old brother to practice and he doesn't have a seatbelt on, you're going to lose your license when we once write you that ticket. That's an automatic loss of license. So you want seatbelts on the kids especially. And anyone under 70 years old or 70 pounds has to be in a child seat. Connecticut is a no quota state. There's special laws in the books. We keep track of all stats in New Canaan. We know how many dog bites there are. We know how many trees go down. We know all that kind of stuff. And all burglaries, car break-ins, stolen vehicles, frauds, domestic violence, everything. But we don't keep track of tickets written because there's laws prohibiting that. My supervisor's not allowed to ask me if I wrote a ticket unless it's in a car accident. It's the only exception. Or for anything on my enforcement activity. So we're not doing it to meet a number. We don't do it for funding. All the ticket revenue goes to the state of Connecticut. The town gets actually almost nothing. The department literally gets nothing. So it's only done to correct bad driving behavior. So again, not a quota state. It's against the law. A supervisor is not even allowed to ask, except in car accident reports. That's it. There are no traffic cameras in the state of Connecticut. I mean, there are. They're used for News 12 and all that, but they're not recording. They're only live in real time, and they can't be used for issuing tickets. So it's considered a backdoor tax. It's not allowed. So you're never gonna run through a red light, and I strongly recommend you not run through the red light. But you're never gonna run through a red light and get a ticket in the mail. We don't have traffic cameras for that reason in the state of Connecticut, also on the books. But speaking on red lights, there is no grace period for a yellow. A yellow is the same as a red. You go through a yellow light, you just broke the law. If you go through a yellow light and then literally hit the brakes as hard as you could and came to a complete stop, technically you made the effort, so you're good. But if you kept on going, you violated the law. So, but before everybody says, well, that's really unfair, and what if it's yellow? I don't know a single cop in Connecticut or New Canaan, myself included, who writes tickets for yellow lights. We're looking for that clear red violation. But the most common to this day that I hear is it was yellow. It was yellow. It was yellow. Never has anyone said to me, yeah, it was red. I messed up. It's always yellow. And I'm like, well, that's not an excuse. That's not a legal excuse anyway. So it is, when it's yellow, you guys got to make every effort to brake. Oh, one of the big things I always noticed is that a lot of people don't know where they are, especially when they get in accidents. You know, hey, I was in an accident. Okay, well, what road are you on? And they have no idea. And it's a road, of course, in New Canaan they drive all the time, but they don't know. So I'm a field training officer. So whenever someone comes out of the police academy, they ride with me for 10 weeks. And one of the first things I do with them is I say, okay, pay attention to the roads, because I'm going to quiz you on almost every road. And anytime you don't know a road, I'm going to make you turn the car all the way around, walk. We're going to go all the way back, and we're going to read that sign together. Whenever you drive by a street, mom and dad, ask your kid, what road did we just pass? Oh, we're on South Ave. We just passed, Oak Street. Okay, what road was that? That was Church Street. It builds the kids' awareness up to their surroundings, so they're not just kind of zoning out. And it also makes them learn the area so much better. We're not allowed to use, for example, GPS in our cars to go to a call. So if we're going lights and sirens to a call, we're supposed to know how to get there. It's one of the ways you pass field training to become an officer on your own. You have to know the roads, pretty much cold. And one of the easiest ways to learn them is for 10 weeks while you're riding with the senior officer, we just say, call out every road you see. Call them out. I want to hear them. And then we'll start quizzing you randomly. We'll start trying to divert your attention and talk about something else and say, hey, what road was that right there? So do the same thing. Just because you know the roads doesn't mean your 16-year-old son or daughter knows the roads. And chances are they really don't, because again, people are always lost. They're like, I see a blue mailbox. I'm like, well, that doesn't really help us, of course. So you need to try to understand where your surroundings are. A lot of the things we see at the scenes of accidents that we look for, skid marks, that'll tell us if a vehicle was speeding or tried to attempt to brake. Skid marks are the friction that's caused by the tire when you brake up, skidding on the roadway. It's raising the oil in the road up to the surface. So it's not the rubber of the tire leaving a mark on the road. That's a myth. It's the oil underneath this road surface raising up when you hit that brake and cause that friction. So we can measure the skid marks and actually determine how fast you are going. If we see no skid marks and we see a complete wreck of multiple cars, well, then guess what? We know you never braked. So that's an easy way to determine you never braked. So some things like that we always look out for. So you're not going to be able to fake that later on. So keep in mind, if you guys are going fast, we're going to figure it out. Even if you say, till you're blue in the face that you weren't speeding. If the airbags are deployed, that means the car was going pretty much at least 20 miles an hour, although some cars are triggered for 18. So, if you're in a school zone where you should be going only 10 to 15 and your airbag was deployed, well, we know you were speeding then because they don't deploy below that. Some rules for licenses. So during the first 6 months of a license, you pretty much can't have anyone in the car with you except for mom and dad, the licensed driving instructor. So like Lewis School of Driving is fine. Or a legal adult who's at least 20 years old and has got 4 years of driving experience. For the second 6 months, you can have anybody of the immediate family. So that's when the sibling can go in the car with you. A lot of people believe that hands-free cell phones are allowed. For 16 and 17-year-olds, no talking is the rule. If you're talking hands-free on Bluetooth through the car speakers, you're violating the law. So you can't use the phone whatsoever when you're 16 and 17 years old while driving. These are all on the DMV website. Feel free to just jump on there at any time and click on 16, 17-year-old restrictions and you'll see them. You cannot have any phone access whatsoever while you're in the car, even if it's hands-free. We're mostly looking to see if you are holding the phone, but just keep in mind, you cannot even speak on the phone, even if it is hands-free when you're 16 or 17 years old. So that is against the law. So if you tell us you were on the phone, but you were hands-free, well, you're still in violation. And that will be noted. When it comes to laws and penalties in the state of Connecticut, on my sheet here, all driving offenses are adult. So 16 or 17-year-old is a youthful offender. If, for example, they get into a fight and they get charged, they'll get charged as juvenile and they will go to juvenile court. It'll be a sealed record, not open to the public. It'll be completely anonymous. It'll be removed from your record when you're 18 after you complete your court diversionary programs. However, you're 16 years old and you get caught evading an accident. So that means hit and run, street racing, DUI, you're 16 years old and you've been drinking, you're going to be put into adult system. You're going to come down to the adult jail. You're going to be booked with the adults. You'll give a bond, of course. I'm sure your parents will bond you, but you will be an adult. Your name will be in the paper in the adult section the next day. Your photo will be in the adult section. You don't have that right to privacy as a 16 or 17-year-old. That's one of the only exceptions in the entire state of Connecticut, with the exception of literally murder first degree and like arson are the only other ones where it's 16 and 17-year-olds are also adults. So you have to understand how serious the state of Connecticut takes driving offenses. Again, it's a privilege, it's not a right, and that's why they do it. They really understand that it's a huge cause of property damage and serious injury and death. So they treat it seriously. If you get caught using your cell phone, first offense for a teenager is you're going to lose your license for at least 30 days, and you're going to have a $200 fine. After that, you're going to lose your license for up to 6 months. So if you're 16 and 17, you get caught using your phone, the court is going to suspend your license, even if you pay the fine. And you're probably going to get a huge bump, as Tim said, in your insurance premium. So it happens all the time. I've been doing this for many years. I still cite plenty of teens for their driving with the phone, just as many as adults. They average out. I'm not picking on teens here. So it's a problem. But just understand that that's a serious consequence. Again, the other offenses which will also result in the immediate loss of license are reckless driving. That's where you're going really just too fast for the conditions of the roadway. Think about going like 80 and the 40 type thing. Street racing, we see two cars lined up on the road speeding down together. We'll assume it's street racing. Passenger restrictions. So don't put your friends in the car, guys. They get away with it scot-free. If we stop them, you're the one who gets cited. So don't put your friends in the car with you. It's just not worth it. And again, blame us. Like Tim said, say, hey, you know what? I got in trouble with the cops already. I can't get in trouble again. So just keep that in mind. Those are driving offenses are adult, and these offenses will result with a loss of license for you guys that won't happen to an 18-year-old adult. So there are extra penalties in that. And again, that falls back on because it's a privilege, it's not a right. So let me just kind of go through my top 10 of the main thing, and I kind of touched on a few of these already, but I'll just go in the order. All driving offenses are adult crimes. You have a passenger restriction violation that will result in a tow and the loss of your license and a fine. We have a zero tolerance for drinking or drugs. Zero tolerance technically means a blood alcohol content of 0.02%. That just kind of covers the possibility of, let's just say, the old days of mouthwash or something like that. But if any odor of alcohol on you, you're going to be arrested for it. To follow off of that, the standard field sobriety tests are mandatory, which is called implied consent. You don't have the right to have an attorney with you. You don't have the right to have your parents with you. You have to take them. If you refuse to take them, we don't force you to take them. We just immediately arrest you, and that's as far as we're concerned, that's a guilty conviction. So again, no cell phone use if you're 16 or 17 years old, even if it's hands-free. You're only allowed to have immediate family in the car for the first 6 months to a year. Oh, curfew. Curfew is 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Can't be on the roads after 11 p.m. and you can't be on the roads before 5 a.m. There is an exception for that, school events. If you're coming and going from a school event, such as the prom, that's fine. You want to bring proof with you, though, if you're doing this. So you want to hold on to like your ticket to the prom, for example. Okay, that's a clear indication. Or the ticket to a dance or some sort of like bonfire event like's going on tomorrow, if it was running past that at the time. So if the event ends at 8 and it's now midnight, that does not count as an excuse. We are aware when the school events are going on. So just keep in mind that, you can't say to us, well, the school event was on tonight. Well, it might have been, but that was 5 hours ago. So, why are you still on the road? You need 40 hours behind the wheel to apply for your license. Strongly recommend at least 100. The test is 25 questions. It's pretty standard permit road test skills questions. And of course, number one, the most important one, motor vehicle crashes are still the number one cause of death for 15 to 19-year-olds in the state of Connecticut each year. So that's why we take this so seriously. It's not because we're trying to be hard on you guys. It's because that this is the number one, fortunately, cause of death for youths in the state of Connecticut. So my bonus add-on to this is don't leave your keys in the car, not even in the driveway, not even overnight, not even 5 minutes. We just had 2 stolen cars today alone. I worked day shift today, 7 to 3. 2 stolen cars that came in from last night. Another 2 cars were entered on the west end of the road off of Jelliff Mill, that area. So it's happening every night. We are hitting new records every year for our stolen vehicles. They're coming down from Bridgeport, from Waterbury, all over New Haven. We arrested 2 brothers a month ago at midnight for stealing a car out of a driveway, Wells Lane or somewhere, like around a month ago. You know, they started in Greenwich, they worked their way north all throughout the night, and they just keep hitting up every little town they can get. They just assume there's not going to be any cops in those towns, and they think they're going to get away with it. So, you know, we caught them, we got them in the act, the car was returned, although heavily damaged. And, you know, the guy, his keys were in the car, so it was an easy steal. So don't make it so easy for them. I always tell people in New Canaan, your next door neighbor will not rob you. That's the kind of community New Canaan is. But the guy from Norwalk, Stamford, Bridgeport, they will come and try to break in and steal because they feel that it's a safe bet to come to a town like this. So don't make it easy for them. Don't confront them either, though. They can, you know, they can be aggressive if they feel like there's someone trying to stop them. Just call us. Just call us right away. Just dial 911. Don't be afraid to dial and call us and say, hey, I see 2 guys in my driveway, or I just saw somebody wander like up and down my street. That's what we're here for. We're here to help. And that's what I want to just kind of like portray most of all. We are here to help. We want to keep everyone safe. Just have to understand that these rules are meant to protect the group, most importantly, over the individual, because we don't want to have to ever knock on the door and have to give a death notification for someone who got hit by someone else and it wasn't even their fault and that person was violating the rules. I responded to a bicyclist that was hit by a car 2-3 months ago, and that middle of the afternoon, that car fled the scene. We caught the car the next day thanks to witnesses, and we were able to piece together enough forensics to trace it. But, you know, like, that's the kind of stuff that happens a lot. And we, you know, luckily that person survived, albeit in critical condition. And that's the stuff that why we enforce these rules. We don't want to have to make those kind of notifications to family members. I will leave you guys with this. There's a good story you can all read. It just recently had a tragic ending. It happened in 1999. So back when I was in school myself, and I remember this. This was kind of like national news, even though this happened in Texas. If you want to Google the last name, it's Sabrido. She was Venezuelan American. S-A-B as in boy, U-R-I-D-O. Her first name was Jackie. She was a passenger in a car. Her friend was driving drunk in Texas. He veered off the road and struck another vehicle. The car burst into flames. She pulled out barely alive with burns all over her body. She just died a few weeks ago at the age of 40. He walked away with almost not a scratch on him. And, you know, he's been riddled with guilt ever since then. He did around 5 years in prison. The 2 backseat passengers were both killed. And he'd been drinking and speeding that night. And as a result, he lost control of the car on a long road in Texas. And he crashed into another vehicle. And he has to live with the guilt that he has now been responsible for 3 of his good friends' deaths. And she had to live with a horrible disfigurement for the next 20 years until she just recently passed away. I'm going to show you on my computer. I have it pulled up, just her face before and after, and what he looks the same. I just want to show you what she looks like now. You can kind of make sure. Here we go. So you can all see, this is her right here back in 1999. This is her after all of her surgeries. She has no ears, no lips. She has a reconstructed nose. This is him reuniting with her. She forgave him for what happened. And this is him doing interviews throughout the years just to safe driving events for the, you know, the guilt and the shame he experienced for that event that caused the disfigurement and deaths of his friends. So it's a serious responsibility. It's your first step into adulthood, driving these cars. Before then, you probably had very little interaction with the police, if ever. And now all of a sudden you're going to start to experience, a firsthand account with the police departments as you become more and more into the adult world. So just remember, it can be great and liberating to have a car. We're all about that. We were all 16 once ourselves, but there's a lot of rules out there and you just need to follow them. And it's for the safety of everyone, not just the safety of yourself. That's it.
Thank you so much, Officer Caponero. We appreciate your time and all of that information. Some of it a little scary, but good to know, because obviously, as you said, it is a privilege, not a right. I see that we do have a few questions. The first one I see is how far in advance you should make the permit. Now, I know back when my daughter did it, I did it like almost 3 months in advance, but Marie, I don't know if you can answer that question, because maybe it's further out now. I'm not sure, because she was pre-pandemic.
Right. So, I mean, a few months is usually enough. 3 months. I'm actually surprised, Lawrence, you got something for next year. But the DMV, sometimes they get jammed up. So if you can get on there and know that your kid's birthday's next September and they'll make the appointment, hey, put it in the system. It's there. Absolutely. But they are backed up, less lately. So I would say as soon as you think about it, make the appointment.
Because I knew people had said to me, like, my daughter was she got stuck a little bit in the pandemic, but
yeah, that was a tough.
She got the permit
time.
before. She got it in February, and the pandemic came in March, so she was able to get the permit. But people had said to me, "Oh, 2 or 3 months in advance." So,
yeah, and the good thing to remember too, if that does even happen, I know a lot of kids don't realize, or parents don't realize, that they can still start the training of the classroom training. They can't do the driving training, but as long as they're 16, they can still be gaining that information and knowledge. And to be honest, the classroom training sometimes becomes one of the hurdles for them getting their license, because they just miss a class or miss this class and life gets in the way. So the minute you can jump on that classroom training with or without a permit is advisable.
Thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
And I see another question. Are police officers driving around every night looking for car thefts? Do we have these resources? I don't know if I understand that question. Resources like to know how many car thefts there are? Is that the question? I'm not sure.
It probably means to stop the car thefts.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Is what she's saying. Oh, do we have money like for officers to be out? Is that the question? Sorry, the question is a little confusing. Oh, money to pay for the officers to be out.
So we have set up just recently a regional task force to try to combat this growing issue. The majority of the people who are stealing the cars are under the age of 18. They're juveniles themselves. Stealing a car is actually protected as a juvenile offense. It's called youthful offender. Driving with your cell phone or DUI is an adult crime. Stealing a car is a juvenile offense. Again, I can't stress enough the difference of adult court and juvenile. Juvenile court is really about second chance, rehabilitation, no threat of jail time almost. DUI is absolutely a threat of jail time. That's just how the laws are. We are not allowed to pursue over property crimes because we don't want them to then crash the car and either kill themselves, their passenger, or someone innocent who's just on the other side of the road minding their business. But we are using more and more sophisticated techniques such as highway cameras to track the movements, DNA swabs of all vehicles. That negates itself with, as far as the Attorney General's office is concerned, if you didn't lock your car, because now all of a sudden they can claim that they just happened to stumble across a car that was abandoned in Bridgeport, and they put their hands in the wheel just looking for identification to help find the owner. So you need to lock the car. That way, when we find someone's DNA in that car on the steering wheel, we can now go after them for the offense. So we are doing task forces. We are working more and more with other agencies. I myself have confronted several of these guys as they've committed these offenses, but they're operating under the no rules. we have to follow rules for the safety of everyone. If they're going to drive in a very dangerous manner, we have to call off the pursuit because we don't want to risk the public for a stolen car. So it's a very difficult crime. And that's why I was saying, when you see something, call us. A lot of people wait almost until the person's gone because they're like, well, I wasn't sure. Well, now with them on the road, it's a lot harder for us to make that first find the vehicle and then to make the stop. So if you see something in your driveway, call us. Again, just last night, 2 cars were stolen out of a driveway. So this is happening every day. And yes, both cars had their keys left in them. So these are easy crimes to stop. I mean, I live in Stamford. My house is loaded with cameras for many reasons. And every week or so, I see someone enter my driveway at 4 a.m. and shake my door handle. I'm asleep, but I see the movement the next day. So it's happening everywhere. But I keep everything locked up and secured. So they're not coming to the front doors of the houses. They're just trying to get to the cars, to the easy stuff. They don't want confrontation. They're usually 16, 17, maybe 18-year-olds. So just if you just take those few extra steps, don't leave a purse in the front seat. Don't leave an iPad in the front seat. Lock the car. Don't leave the keys in the car. Even if it's in the garage, don't leave the keys in the car. You'll probably never have to call us about this. And for all of you, just take a photo of your license plate right now. First thing after you finish this today, because the first thing I do when we get there is we need to know your plate, and you don't know it. And then now we have to take extra time to figure that out, where we could have put that into the system a lot quicker. Because once the car is in the system, any law enforcement agency across America comes across it, it's going to show them up immediately in our system as stolen, and they're going to get the hit alert right away. So there's 2 ways to do that, either the license plate or the VIN number. So the VIN number is 17 digits. I'm not expecting you all to memorize that, but try to memorize your license plate. That would help out a lot too.
Hey, George, just on a follow-up of the stolen cars, we are the recipients of all this stuff. We probably had about 15 or 16 of these thefts come through our office, and a lot of them, and you obviously see this too, but a lot of them I think these guys are trying to join entry to a gang, and they're seen in front of these cars upstate somewhere on Facebook, and those cars have been retrieved. A lot of them are damaged, a lot of them totaled, some of them don't show. And I spoke to Leon, the chief, the other day, and Kevin Moynihan, because they were asking me about my experience with this stuff. And I said, why don't you guys publish, or the phone call or whatever Kevin does for the COVID information, like 3 or 4 days a week, why doesn't he do that specifically for cars? I guarantee you, since nobody reads the paper in print anymore, and a lot of people don't go online to read it, I guarantee you there's 60% in this town don't even realize what's going on.
Yeah.
If he did that public announcement over and over, I think people would be more aware of doing those things. Just, it doesn't cost anything to do it. It's only going to help.
Right.
So I just think if you could mention to Leon, that might be a suggestion he does.
Yeah, I know. I agree. The chief's put out many op-ed articles himself in the paper each year, begging for people to lock up. Obviously, we don't have any authority over the first selectman's office. That's going to be their choice. I think they really tried to use the EOC system only for storms, emergencies, stuff like that. But obviously, it's something that can be relayed up, and I'm all for it because I'm the one who's out there always every day taking these reports, trying to help find these cars for everyone. And yeah, you touched on that. These cars are almost always recovered.
Yeah.
They're just used to commit other crimes. And they come back and they reek of marijuana. They've been banged up. It was a joyride. And as a result of that, no one feels like, people feel like their car is almost like not theirs anymore. It's, been damaged. It's been, driven hard. They probably redlined the engine for fun. So they damaged the transmission. So again, these are all those collateral damage effects of, having your car stolen and then recovered. You probably lost a little bit of value of the vehicle.
Yeah, makes sense. Let me see. I don't see any other questions. I'll just ask any of the participants, if you have any other questions, to please put those in the chat. Otherwise, if I don't see any more questions, then I think we'll wrap up. I think we look one more time. Nope, I don't see anything else.
I have a silly question, sorry, that it could apply to our kids. I think really, well, anyone on the panel, sort of whether it's Officer Caponera, Marie, Tim can answer this. We joke in our household that it is like a Connecticut nice thing that people do for example, I was at a traffic light today on one of the side streets on 123, looking to make a left going southbound, and someone tried to like wave me on, telling me it was okay to go when I didn't have the right of way. And then the driver got very upset with me because I chose to wait in my position and let them continue on the right of way. When our kids are faced with a situation like that, but in my mind, the right thing to do is to follow the rules. But we've actually experienced it several times in our household where drivers have actually yelled at family members that are driving because we didn't like let them do the nice thing. Does this make sense? I don't know if anyone here
We
noticed
actually we actually discussed that in one of the classes, because it does happen and it will happen, and it happens to all of us, you know, and sometimes it's advantageous. Sometimes you're like, no, I won't go because I see something you don't see.
Yeah.
And boom, right? So our recommendation to the students is to not take that come on, because we find they're new drivers and they don't have the wherewithal, the experience to assess the situations around them and make a decision based on traffic patterns and things that that particular driver who's waving you on can see. They get annoyed, There's not much you can do about that, but at least you've held your place, you know where you are, and you're safe, and you've made your statement. So we encourage them not to. I mean, eventually all of us sometimes take advantage of that if it works. Otherwise we don't. So
Great. Thanks, Maria. Thank you.
We do have
Sure.
one more question about what is the status when a student turns 18, even if they haven't had their license for a year, do those juvenile laws officers still apply to them about who can be in the car?
No, they're adults. They're legal adults. They get the no more, lack of a better term, no more holding the hands. They're adults, so you know they can have their car with their friends. That's kind of where now you hopefully have parents stepping in and say, you know what, you're 18, but I'm not going to allow you to have more than one or two people, and if I see it, then you know you can't have the car anymore. So.
Right.
I think that's it. Do you have any other questions? Last requests, participants? No? Okay, I think that's it. Well, I think, you know, Mary and I definitely want to thank all of you for being here, volunteering your time. We so appreciate it. It's really beneficial to our community and our 10th grade parents. You know, I don't know, like, you know, I think everyone gets very nervous at this time when they're first, you know, having their kids first learn to drive, and we appreciate all of the resources you've provided. And I don't know, anything else, Mary? Am I forgetting anything?
No, I think that's it. Just thank you so much. This was, as I mentioned after Marie gave her section, this was, I learned a lot of new things tonight. And, you know, I sort of considered myself a parent, you know, who'd been through this twice and like someone experienced. I have to tell you, like, this was great. So I hope everyone else got as much out of it as I did tonight. And I actually think I'm gonna make all three of my kids sit through the presentation, even though some of them are older than 21 now, when they come home over Thanksgiving, because I think that there were some really great bits of information here that anyone of any age should be aware of. So thank you so much.
Yes, we did have a question as to whether it will be available, and it will be posted probably sometime tomorrow, is my guess, onto the PFA's website.
Wording will be shared on the PFA website in the next couple of days. So
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Well,
Thank
and thank
you
you,
all.
everyone.
Thank you, Larry, for setting it up.
all right,
And
good night, everybody.
thanks to all our
Thanks,
panelists.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Bye now.
Take care.
See ya.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thank you again.